Man.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. It's Monday, one of our favorite days of the week. We are excited about our show, Talk That Real Shit. Today, we have an amazing guest, but also in the absence of our sister, Tanisha, we're sending her much love and wellness. Keep our activists uplifted, guys. We have people on the front lines who are risking it all for the betterment of our people, not just Black people, but our people in America. So let's make sure that we are keeping them uplifted and supporting them. Tanisha, we're sending you much love and light at this time. So welcome to my brother Neo. We're going to hold it down for Tanisha in her absence. And we also are welcoming a fellow teacher here in the Metro Atlanta area, Barrington Martin. I'll let him tell a little bit about himself and highlighting one of Atlanta's focuses, which is encouraging male educators of color to run for public office. So Barrington, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself, brother?
Yes, sir. First and foremost, thank you guys for having me this afternoon. I'm very excited to be here, very excited to talk to you all, very excited to talk to the people. Again, my name is Barrington Martin II. I am a congressional candidate in the special election for the 5th congressional seat of Georgia. I'm born and raised out of Atlanta, Georgia, went to Cedar Grove High School, went to Georgia State, studied political science, and currently I am a special needs educator in the great city of Atlanta, Georgia. I am from the west side by way of the east side. So big shout out to everyone and anyone from these neighborhoods who are watching right now.
Awesome. So let's we can jump right into it.
Wait.
Oh, I was about to say, go ahead, Neo.
Yes. So I have never I've met a Jason. I've actually met a Nehemiah before and a Tanisha. I've never met a Barrington. So where did your parents get that name from?
My grandmother, big shout out to my grandmother, Helen, by the way. She named my father. So I'm a second. My dad didn't want to name me Junior. He wanted my suffix to be Junior because him and I last name. And normally when you switch up the middle names, that person, the offspring is the second. But my dad wanted my name to be prestigious. So he added the one to be Junior. But my grandmother named my father, and she just randomly just picked this name anyways. And then my dad was like, "You're going to carry on my name," and boom.
Okay. That was a cool story, brother. Thank you for sharing. And Neo, that actually was a good question because I was trying to think now, Barrington as a first name, or Barrington as one of our watchers has said, not a Black Barrington. So very unique within itself. But also paying homage to Chad Boseman, who passed away over the weekend. As teachers and educators, I know all three of us know the impact that the movies that he has starred in have done to our community. Moreover, Black Panther and the major impact that it had on Black children, empowering our young girls to be scientists and engineers and go into fields that are not heavily promoted to them in public schools. But also for our Black boys, because if I could be real honest, we need to see a hero.
Right.
And we saw, Barack Obama, we see so many Black male educators, Black fathers that are doing their things daily. So I want to shout them out. But we needed a Black superhero. And, we'll talk a little bit more about that, but just wanted to acknowledge that brother and his work and the impact that he's had on our society and our communities. So with that being said, let's get right into it, fellas. Again, Barrington, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Tanisha is supposed to be resting, and I do see her messages popping up. So sis, rest. But definitely chime in, get that watch party going for us, for our supporters. So Neo, you want to open us up, or what we going to do, brother?
Yeah, I mean, like we can still kind of talk about, the impact that Chadwick made on, the world period. One of the things that I thought about is, just within the past week, I lost my father to a heart attack. He was only 58 years old.
I'm sorry to hear that, man.
Yeah, this is my stepfather. So this comes 2 years after my biological father, who also passed early. He died when he was 57. And so, if people think that these three men, their early premature deaths don't have anything to do with the Black Lives Matter movement, then they're mistaken, because it has everything to do with, the racial disparities that impact every sector of our society: education, economics, and healthcare. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah,
Oh, can I also add, not to cut you off, rest in peace, John Thompson, famous icon, historical coach for Georgetown University. And I think that it's important to mention him as well. He passed last night.
Wow.
In that he put a lot of Black men through college, even though they played basketball for him. And he was a very instrumental figure as far as Black manhood is concerned with a lot of basketball players. So I think we would be remiss if we didn't mention him as well.
yes,
It's a tough week.
totally. It's just a lot happening in our society. While we're talking about loss, if I could just be quite honest, grief in itself is very heavy this year.
Right.
I had a student that passed away in January, right after Dr. King's birthday. I was actually in North Carolina, of course, in the movement, right, doing the work, and got the call that my student passed. And that was January. And there are still moments where it still hits me like, wow, like I was walking with that family, trying to have faith and hope that, she would get well and recover. And so, teachers are grieving, students are grieving, parents are grieving. Being Black in America is hard, y'all. Today we're talking about some hard topics that are happening in our society. And, one of the things that I think it would be good for people to acknowledge is it's okay to grieve. And so
Right.
what are some things that, the two of you are doing to, like my daddy would say to me growing up, to keep it in the middle of the road? What are you guys doing during this year of 2020?
Well, as you know, I go back and forth between Tulsa and Atlanta all the time. And so this past Sunday, I actually I took a blanket and I laid out at Piedmont Park underneath a big tree just by myself. It was great. Just being out there watching people, watching kids, watching families run by. It's great. It really helped me out. But on a professional level, I definitely talk to a mental health professional. I think that that's something that we really need to push. And I was happy to see, some of the speakers from Friday's Million March on Washington, which was the 57th anniversary March on Washington, actually mentioned the importance of having mental health.
That's good. That's good. Barrington, with you running for office, with you being a teacher during this time of virtual learning, brother, that's real. I know that a lot of times, especially in the public sector, in politics, you have to have on this face, right? Like, we don't see politicians cry. We see them being compassionate, but not too compassionate. It's like, the kind of dog and pony show, but, behind closed doors, you all are real people. So, as a teacher that is teaching our youth, but also trying to make change and, being in the forefront, how are you handling all of this?
Oh man, a lot of ways. I have to thank my family and my friends because they are, I would say, my backbone. Because essentially all the time I have to wear different masks. Like politicians always have to be on point. Like no excuses. You always have to be on point. And even when I get some of the most harsh comments and disrespect that comes my way, I can never retaliate. I have to smile and just basically endure. And even in the classroom from virtual learning, I do a lot of one-on-ones. And so I can't express the frustration I have with my students when they're now in tasks or, they're just not, paying attention to things I want them to. So what I have to rely on ultimately is just, venting with my family, my friends. And I write a lot. Like, man, I go through a moleskin in a month. And this is really ridiculous how crazy that is. But that's one of my passions that I don't get a chance to speak about much. I'm a writer. That's what I do 24/7. So anything that I feel, man, I just write it out. And ultimately, I try to intersect between my activism, between my political run, and between like dealing with students, because essentially the problems I see in politics are the same problems I deal with on a day-to-day basis. So why not like intersect all of those together? And essentially it helps me come up with like solutions on the fly to better understand what needs to happen going forward.
Wow. So
That's dope.
Jason, so actually I have a question. So I've been a teacher before. I miss the classroom so much. I hope it's a place that I get back to at some point and just be a publisher over here at the Black Wall Street Times. Mm-hmm. Jason has been a teacher. You yourself are currently a teacher. So are your students currently doing virtual learning now, or?
Oh, 100% virtual learning.
So
good deal.
Have you noticed a change in their mental health at all?
Oh man. And that's the thing that needs to be discussed about most, because people don't understand. And I'm sorry if I get passionate about this, but this is a pet peeve of mine. I mean, we're gonna talk about the real shit. Let's talk about it. Let's get right into it. People don't understand that even though children are children, they possess egos and they have a sense of self, right? And I say this because even though kids get a bad rep for not going outside and playing video games, they're intersocial relationships matter. So when they're not able to play with their friends, when they're not able to, do the necessary things that we see or we used to get on them within the classroom on a day-to-day basis, it affects their learning. And what I'm seeing now is, even though we think that because the pandemic and the fact that we're utilizing technology, that things will carry on as normal, that's a falsehood, because what we're going to see within the next 5 years, I would say educational level, as far as success, as far as the necessary knowledge that they need, is going to be drastically different in the next 5 years, more so than it's been over the last decade. And I think that, and it's not necessarily due to the students not being able to learn, it's that the entire environment has been flipped upside down on their heads. And this entire pandemic, unfortunately, has done a disservice to them. So we have to come up with the necessary solutions to keep them heavily engaged so they can retain the information that they need to retain.
That's awesome, man. And, I know that it's hard. My school last year, we were in the middle of the pandemic and we were already on virtual learning. So, it was a journey for our kids, and even having one of my students participate in the town hall, thanks to Black Wall Street Times for powering that, and Barrington for being one of the speakers. But, one of my students, spoke about the difficulties that, they're still having in navigating this. But also talked about the heavy frustration that, his friends who are not at the same school as him are having. And some of them are actually going back to, face-to-face learning. So Barrington, as a Black male teacher, how concerning is it for Black and brown teachers and students to be going back into public schools that are overcrowded, underfunded, and don't have the staff to ensure that these safety protocols are being followed to keep them alive?
Oh, it's extremely concerning. Mainly in the sense of, like you said, like, first of all, there is no equitable access to the necessary facilities or the necessary tools that's needed to educate each and every one of these Black and brown children at the utmost level. It's ridiculous. Then on top of that, when you look at the stats of the pandemic, it's us that are dying the most, And so you have all of these factors in play, and they come together. It's a series of unfortunate events that is going to amount to an even bigger catastrophe, not right now, but in the long run. That's why I'm trying to do my best, not just as an educator, but as a politician, to get people to see what's going on, but not right now, but what's coming. Because I say this because of what's going on is a lot of our parents are uneducated at exactly how problematic all the things that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. They think that, it can be a simple fix here and a simple fix there. But what they're not seeing is they lack the foresight to understand that these little small, minute problems right now in the present are going to amount to even bigger problems in the future. So when we start discussing, college, we start discussing, the necessary traits needed to be productive citizens when they become adults, or even when they become elder teenagers, measures, they won't have that training. They won't have those tools needed. Why? Because of the pandemic, because of the poverty that they exist in, that they have no other intangibles that we're not like normally or getting a chance to discuss, that is going to end up having them worse off in the future than they are right now.
That's heavy, man. Neo and I were actually having this conversation. I think it was via Twitter. It's so funny because we're always having conversations, y'all. And I was challenging the Democratic Party. And it was actually one of my brothers. Shout out to Alan Holmes. He was like, when we look at cities that have been heavily, ran by Democrats for decades, what has been the true progress of the Black community? But on the flip side of that, someone also pointed out where you still have, Republican-led areas where there are white people that are living in poverty as well. Quote unquote, what they will call or reference themselves as rednecks or white trash. And they are living in the same, destitute situations under Republican leadership. So what's really happening, y'all? I want to get into that because we are in such a critical time right now, and I don't think that enough Black Americans have their asses awake because everybody wants to be woke, but y'all got to come on and get it together because November is coming soon, and I don't think that we really understand what this president is saying, what these police departments are saying, what the evangelicals are saying, and I'm gonna get to some of them too because I see they've commented on our show, and I got a special message for them. But I do want us to discuss the progress of both the Democrats and the Republicans on the working class, because I want to take race out of it. The working class Americans, what have they done for us?
Last night I was reading Marx, right? Karl Marx, because I'm just trying to understand all of this stuff. I'm like, let me just go back and see, okay, now what did he say? So that's the first thing. But I mean, as a Black man, I'm always going to think in the context of race. I just cannot not think about it, that way. That's my personal opinion. But anyways, Barrington, it looks like you wanted to say something. You're the guest.
I'm so happy Jason mentioned this because it's one of my pet peeves with the political arena in society right now. Because in my honest opinion, it's a twofold problem in America. You have on one end, you have class, you have on one end race, right? To me, race is the smokescreen. The reason I say this is to go back to what Jason says. Race is a smokescreen because there are Black families in the hood that are struggling, right? But then you go to the rural areas and there are white families with the same exact economical situation as that Black family. But this is the killer point right here. And this is the part where most people get lost. The way that the societal hierarchy is set up, the white family has been propagated to believe that the problems of this country have been started and embraced by the Black family, not understanding that this Black family has the exact same issues that you as a white family have in a rural area. All while the people at the top, the 1%, those who hoard all of the resources, who hoard all the money, they play on both individuals or on both families. But because of race, because of this ideology of race, because we can't get or see the trees past the forest, or however that saying is, I know I butchered that, we continuously pay attention to the smaller issue of race as far as being small in regards to class, because a lot of the problems that we have in this nation is built in class and the subjugation of poor people. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the saying, but it's so expensive being poor, and our nation, America, exactly shows us this on a day-to-day basis. So, in my opinion, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party have been two separate wings of the same bird. It's two separate. It subjugates the poor people of those demographics, while the very wealthy continuously become wealthy, while the poor gets bigger and while the middle class gets phased out. And so I think that, especially when you look at the stats and you see that majority of the Republican voters who are white continuously are subjugated by Republican voters, but yet by the Republican Party, but they still vote Republican. 90% of Black people have been voting Democrats since the mid 60s. And without, there has been change, but not the substantial change that we need to further ourselves within society, to close wealth gaps, to continuously seek protections under the law as being Black people. Because yes, we do have the Civil Rights Act, but our, Black men, possessing modern day lynchings on television these days? Why do we have the Voting Rights Act and voter suppression still goes on in 2020? So it's important for us to just wake up. And I really detest the word woke, because a lot of people who feel like they're woke are really lucid dreaming. They're asleep, but they think they're moving around, but they're still asleep. And once we start peeling back the layers and looking at the numbers and looking at the statistical data historically, we'll start to see that even though change has occurred, it's almost in a sense of where we've been getting crumbs, but we haven't had anything before. But the crumbs that we get, we value these little bitty crumbs when we deserve the equitable slice of the pie that we deserve.
That's good. That's good. I don't think that, I go back to Douglas High School. I feel like I was blessed to have great teachers, but also to have a family of educators and entrepreneurs that taught me these things. And I don't take that for granted, because as a teacher, I realized that every Black family is different. This is the issue that I have with what's happening in our country. It becomes black and white, and all of these different dynamics that happen. People will throw up Black on Black crime, but that's not really a thing. It's violence. Why is this violence created? We don't ever want to get to the root problem. We want to just call out Black on Black violence. I'm extremely pissed off, and I want to address these comments from, and I actually researched these people. They're evangelicals, white evangelicals that felt the need to be engaged in our podcast that is liberating the Black minds. Because the reality is, I don't need to liberate your minds, because you already know what the deal is. You are also at the root cause of the problem, specifically white evangelicals who would use the Bible to say that Black people should be enslaved. Black women should not have a voice. They need to sit down and shut up somewhere and not have anything to say. To go even further, addressing these comments from white evangelicals, because I just want the Black conservatives and I want the Black Republicans who have these traditional Bible Belt ideals in their heads to understand this is what your colleagues, because they're not mine, what your colleagues think of us. Ms. Ramsey said in regards to Jacob Blake, he should have been killed because he was a child molester with no facts and no evidence, because anything that the media puts out about Black people, we automatically believe, because that is what propaganda and the media is set up to do. But of course, we automatically believe it because they say it. Another white evangelical says that Jacob Blake is a criminal. If he would have used a knife on the police officer, I guess we, as the show host, condone that right. We need to quit holding these criminals up, but they may be great people. I'm sorry the man is paralyzed, but I guess he shouldn't have resisted arrest. He brought this on himself. If not the cops, it's not the cops' fault. We need to get over it.
But Kyle Rudington got a bottle of water and walked right past several police officers with a gun after murdering 2 people, went home, got in his bed, had a good night's rest.
But again, it's the propaganda. So first of all, white evangelicals, this show is not for you anyway. We are liberating Black minds. We were very clear about our intention and the conversations that we need to have with people who look like us so that we can improve the way that we're living here. But I do want to address this issue in the media, because I also see well-educated Black people who from the hood, they went to the same high school that I went to, and they would throw up a HBCU in a minute, and they make these same comments on Facebook. So I'm addressing them too, because I feel like that's even more deplorable, that we want to sit up here as intelligent, some who are Black Christians, heavily involved in the church, and sit up here and argue about if a Black person should be killed by the police or not. And the problem that I have with that is, where is our faith and belief in God? Why are we as Christians and we as educated Blacks having the conversation and arguing over justifying the loss of someone's life. Like, we should not be engaged in that. That doesn't help us progress as a people if we are sitting up here saying, oh yeah, well, Black lives don't matter and they shouldn't have had a gun. They shouldn't have had a knife in their car. Do you know how many people I walk by and they have pocket knives and guns and they don't look like me every day? And that doesn't give me a reason to say, let me pick up the phone and call the police so that they can be trailed or hunt down and killed. So that's a message that I don't want to just put out in the atmosphere that, you know, we had this conversation a couple of weeks ago. All Black lives matter.
Right.
All lives matter. Life matters, period. I'm not God. I can't recreate someone. I can have children, but that's not, hey, you Neo have a life and I'm gonna take it, but I can bring it back. None of us have that power. So none of us should be in a position to say who is justified to live or die. And that's just my thought on the white evangelical comments that I definitely wanted to make sure we address. And also the perspectives of those Black people who just don't value Black lives, period.
Barrington, I think did you have something at the edge of your tongue?
Oh, absolutely. Like, I could talk, you guys don't understand, I could talk about this for hours because, again, like, we often love to talk about the external factors of our community and what plagues our community, but we never get down to the nitty-gritty of the internal factors. And Black exceptionalism, in my opinion, is what continues to degrade our culture.
Wow.
Wherever that culture may be. Black exception with the fact that you think that you're educated or you went to a HBCU or you have all this so-called prestige and it puts you better than the people within your own community, not knowing that either way it go, you're Black and the outward community is still going to see you the same as the uneducated Black, as the negative stereotypes that we have received as Black people. And I think that we have to get outside of that. And more so than anything, we have to become more empathetic and compassionate to each other moving forward, because it's the only way that change is going to be able to occur, or the change that we need to envision a better future is going to be able to occur. And I think that we tend to lose sight based on the money we obtain in finances, based on the education we obtain, based on the prestige that we obtain in general. And we tend to look down on one another, not understating that, you know, we are in this together at the end of the day. You know what I'm saying?
Totally, brother. I wanted to go to one of the comments that one of our regular viewers mentioned, that she messaged and said, Jason, my friend's son was shot last night. We're definitely sending our thoughts and well wishes to him and his family, as well as your son and yourself. But she made such a powerful statement at the end by saying, I truly believe someone is dropping guns in our neighborhoods. And to be honest, it's been happening for years, y'all.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up on the other side of the railroad tracks from, you know, my cousins and my best friends, and our bus stop was at the liquor store for Doug Hyde, same Douglas High School that Keisha Lance Bottoms went to, T.I., Killer Mike, and so many other great people that I know. So many communities were merged together, and we all had different experiences. But I have seen it. I have seen young Black boys on the corners in the morning. You can ask any of my former coworkers. We didn't have to report to work until 7:30. I'm there at 6:30. And I'm driving early in the morning. I see our kids out at the bus stop, but I also see fancy cars coming through the hood, and they're making drops. They're picking up things. It's people that do not look like us. Why are y'all in the neighborhoods? Now you can't question it now because of gentrification. So you can just walk right out your house and, you know what I'm saying, go have the people do what needs to be done, because now it's gentrified. It's the new West Side in Chicago and all of these other places in Atlanta. It's the new West Side, the new South Side, where gentrification has happened. And so it's not noticeable, but we remember the Atlanta child murders. We remember white males they didn't have white sheets on, but they had their guns and their knives that they don't get shot for having by the police, and they were snatching Black boys and Black girls and putting them in white vans and killing them, murdering them. Those same white vans that drop off drugs and guns in our communities, but we don't address that. Now, this is what we do address. We blame the black boys that are on the street corners. It's their fault because they the ones selling the drugs. It's the girls' fault because of what they wear and parading up and down the streets. So we find blame in us, but we fail to realize the work of the system. So, brothers, y'all chime in on Tony's aspect in regards to the illegal guns and also what I just added, the illegal drugs that are being dropped into Black and brown communities.
You want to, Nehemiah? You can go. I was about to go. I'm sorry.
No, you go right ahead, Barrington.
Okay, so again, and just to repeat your sentiments, Jason, in a different way. Let's really, like, it's important to have these necessary conversations. There are no chemists in the hood. When I say this, the knowledge to make freebase, crack, that didn't originate with us. But why we don't ask the questions of how it started?
Right.
Why don't we ask these questions? How is it that in the inner city projects, these young boys, super young boys have access to semi-automatic artillery? They don't have the money to get that. They don't even have the government clearance to get these things. But yet, this is what we saw within our neighborhoods in the 80s. Not to mention the legislation that was passed to re-emphasize these types of issues within our communities. Welfare, the act of taking the black male out of the home. Forcing the black mother to become the matriarch to take care of all the business. Like it's so many things that are interconnected, that intersects, that we fail to have these conversations about. But when we watch TV, it's so easy to demonize each other. So easy to do that. And it's all because we're not educated as a people to know the questions that need to be asked. And I see the comment about post-traumatic slave syndrome. That's important too. A lot of people don't understand that trauma is generational. Trauma is in the spirit. So when your grandparents, your great grandparents have hardships, you have specific cycles within your family that continuously get passed on, and you don't understand why it's so hard to kick these habits when it's ingrained within your spirit, it's ingrained within your soul. For us, and I'm going to continue to beat this in all of our minds, is empathy and compassion. Empathy and compassion. You never know what someone's going through. You never know what they had to deal with in the past. And this is why we have to have grace with one another. You won't change anything with hate. You have to lead with love at all times. And that's one of my philosophies, so to speak, even in the political realm, even in the classroom. Like, you always have to lead with love, because people, especially our people, deserve grace. It's 2020. We've had a lot of blows dealt within the Black community.
Yes,
and we don't understand up to this point now that we have to come together more so than now than any time before. We won't ever get it.
That's good.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Neil, and then I got a follow-up question.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about what Jacob Blake's sister actually said at the march. And she had said, take care. She said, Black men, stand up. And then she said, sisters, take care of your Black men. And it was the first time that I actually heard, just recently, a Black woman, just a person, period, stand to say, hey, Black men, they need to be taken care of too. And that's something that I have not seen at all. It's all been, I love the Black girls movement, the Black girl magic movement. Yes, we have Black boy joy, but Black men are hurting too during this time. And so, I wanted to see what you guys where your thoughts were on about that.
Ooh. Well, Neil, let me say this, brother. I'm old school in some ways. And when my great grandfather passed away, I was 10 years old, and I would never forget the last conversation that we had. It was almost like, he was just dropping every life lesson on me. Like, this is what, I want for you to do. And, when I received his journal after his passing, one of the things that he said to me was to take care of my girls. And that was my great grandmother, my grandmother, and my mother. He was like, take care of my girls. That's all he wanted me. He didn't want me to, he probably was like, I want you to go out and be successful and happy and have kids and all of that. But that won't even his thing. He was like, I want you to take care of my girls. And so Black brothers, biracial brothers, brown brothers, whoever brothers that are listening, we have an obligation to take care of the children and seniors in our community. And we also have an obligation to stand up and protect our women. I don't think that we're doing that enough. Black women helped to start Black Lives Matter. Black women have been driving education in our public schools for years, going back to the early 1900s. My great grandmother was fighting against the state of West Virginia so that Black children could be educated. So I think that Black women for so long have carried our communities, have stood beside Black men, have been in abusive relationships to keep families together, have been oppressed, they have been silenced, they have been overlooked, they have not been appreciated in these movements, and they have been forgotten. And we need more Black men to say, God damn it, it's enough. Breonna Taylor needs justice, and we're not going to move until justice happens. When you look at what's happening for Breonna Taylor, you see Yandy and you see Portia Williams and you see other women who are mothers and teachers and entrepreneurs that are getting arrested and saying enough is enough. And we need strong men in the mix, making sure that our women are protected, making sure that our girls that are out there with them and our young boys are protected. So I totally agree with you, but I also want to encourage our brothers. We are at fucking war. And I'm not even excusing my language, and I normally don't go that far, but we're at war. And I want Black people to wake the fuck up and realize we are at war. We cannot take another death of an innocent Black person being killed, whether they are a male, a child, it could be a black and white cow. I don't care what it is at this point. Nothing that is Black should be killed by a police officer in America that is not warranted. They are not causing harm. They are not a threat. And so, Tania, to your point, definitely, I salute her for saying that Black men are hurting. We are, but we've got to make sure that we're protecting each other, our children and our seniors, because they are the weakest of our communities. I'm not saying that they're weak, but we know that children can't do as much that they need to, and seniors, as they are at a certain age, can't either. And so we have to make sure that we are protecting them by any means necessary.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Barrington,
right.
anything to add?
Did you have something you want to add to that, brother? Because I got a good question for you.
Okay, I'm gonna be quick with my response to you because I totally agree with what you're saying. But like, I think I've had the blessing to come from a lineage of like Black patriarchs in my family. Like I grew up with my father, with both parents actually, and my dad is a man's man, and he always taught me the concept of accountability, a concept that I think that most of our community, especially Black men, are missing, meaning that positive and negative outcome, you had something to do with it, even if it was totally out of your control, and some type of decision that you made or some type of judgment that you made. And I think that this mindset allowed me to take ownership and take access of my own life, no matter what has happened or occurred to me. I never made excuses for it. And so to go back to the point where Black men are hurting, yes, absolutely. But I feel that we have the overarching responsibility to be the warriors of our village. And by village, I mean community. We have that responsibility to make sure, the elders are protected, to make sure our women could embrace their femininity and be the women that they need to cultivate the type of community that we need for a progressive future for our babies. Because at the end of the day, it's only so much we could do, but we have to do all that we can to, embrace and cultivate a future that our children could live within and be successful in the future.
That's good. That's good. And speaking about the future, brothers, I want y'all to check this out. November is coming up. I know that locally we have major local elections. I want to talk about Gwinnett just for 2 seconds. We know we have Barrington's, election that is coming up. We also have a major school board election in Gwinnett County. These white women have been on this school board for decades and have been failing Black and brown children. I was on a forum that the NAACP hosted last evening, and they are so aloof to the issues. They don't even know. The NAACP, the parents were bringing up facts, and school board members that were elected to serve had no clue what was going on. And that's bullshit. They have been there. They have been upholding the status quo, and we need parents We need residents to get out to vote. So with that being said, Barrington and Neo, how can we mobilize more youth, 18 to 25? And really, I want to stretch that and say youth and young adults, you know, and go into my church mode of 18 to 40. How can we engage them to really get involved in voting, and more so, well, let's do that first. Let's do voting, and then I'll add my second part to that later. How can we get them more engaged in voting?
Okay, I got man, plenty. Well, I think it's a twofold issue again, and everything goes back. I can't put all the onus on the younger generation because they do vote, and I think that's one of the common misconceptions about the younger generation. The problem is they don't feel compelled to vote for the options that they have, and that's the thing. I think that essentially what we should be tailoring the youth towards is getting involved within their the elections, to get involved within politics, because they get involved in politics. What you will see is a chain reaction of young people who want to be more involved, and they will get out to vote. But when you have the same old, not old literally, but just the same type of candidates that appear on the ballot, you don't give. It's almost as if, you know, people become disillusioned with the entire political process, because it's like, why? Like, I've had someone just like this 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I'm tired of seeing candidates like this. This is why I don't want to vote, because at the end of the day, I think it's very important for us to understand that in 2020, moving forward, we should no longer have to choose between the lesser of two evils. I should not have to pick my poison going forward when my future is at stake. So if anything, I think that we need to move past getting young people to vote, but more so than anything, get them involved within the political system, encourage them to run, encourage them to be the change that they want to see.
That's
because
good.
we can't just rely on voting. And that's another pet peeve and a beef I have with the Black community. We always talk about how our ancestors died or gave their life to vote. And that's a very noble thing. And I totally appreciate it, and I understand that. But that was simply a means to an ends of freedom. And I think we lose sight of that. And what I mean by that is, voting is important, but what good is your vote if you're having to choose both poisons that is not going to be, it's not going to produce a positive for you? Yeah, it's like, it's like again, picking between two poisons. It's either way it go, it's a negative outcome. How about we change the choices that we get?
Mm-hmm.
Now let me say this, and I'm gonna pass it to Neo. Even if your candidate doesn't win, residents should take leadership to task. And Tish made that comment, but I was actually getting ready to address that same thing. Voting is not where it stops. We have to hold these elected officials accountable. That's why these goddamn kids can't read, because we're not holding the school board members accountable. It's 2020. Yes. We have public schools that do not have culturally inclusive curriculum. So when you look at this wall behind me, I call it the Great Wall of Ancestors. My students know about these people because I have this in my classroom. I'll be damned if a public school district is going to tell me that I can't teach Black and brown children from whence they came and our connection to Mexico and the Caribbean and the islands. Like, they need to know that, because if they're not getting it at home, where else will they get it from? So we have to do what Tish just mentioned. We have to hold any elected official accountable, from school board. We've heard from school board members on this show, and I'm going to throw this out to any Chicago residents or Atlanta residents. We need city council members on here, because I don't understand why a city council that has a Black president in Atlanta will be pushing for any Black youth to be detained for selling goddamn water in the city, when y'all done sent back millions of dollars for the workforce development, and these kids are struggling, one, because their parents ain't got no jobs, because they don't have the training and the access, and two, they don't have any. So now we got Black elected officials with now their counterparts on city councils that are sending money back that could be going into our communities. So city council members, those residents in Chicago, because Chicago and Atlanta have a lot going on right now, and they have Black leadership. So we want to hear from Black leadership. What the fuck is going on? And we don't want any more bullshit about, well, it could have been, it should have been, it could have been a whole lot of things. But we're tired of Black youth out here on the street. And moreover, we are tired of police officers not being held accountable because of poor legislation, and then our people getting killed in the street. So if anybody is connected to a city council person in Chicago or Atlanta or anywhere for that matter that is a predominantly Democratic or Black ran city, tell them to hit us up, because we want to liberate their minds too, so we can get this system changed and moving. Now, Barrington, do you have anything that you want to add about how we can help to hold elected officials accountable?
Hold up, Barrington, before you go. So, and Barrington was with us when we did the virtual town
That's
hall,
right.
right? And so behind stage, the one thing that I said to everybody, right? I said, hey, you guys, we just got a place in Atlanta. We're going to be, we're getting comfortable and moving in and meeting folks. But then I also told you about how in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is home of the original Black Wall Street, that we had just had an election where our candidate, who is extremely talented, didn't win. He was the first Black serious candidate ever, right, to run in this city. And I said to you guys, I said, don't ever take for granted the fact that you have so many Black people in positions of power in your city, because you can actually do something. In places like Tulsa and a lot of places across the Midwest and across the country, period, Black people just don't have the type of political power to even make a change in their city. And that is the God honest truth. So there's no excuse.
That's good. That's actually a show within itself on how we need to be building our own packs. I do know there are a couple of organizations. I know some people that are working to that, but Neo, to your point, we've got to invest in the change that we want to see. If these schools are failing our kids, well, God damn it, we need to start investing in our own schools. And I must give this one nugget of information, and I'm gonna pass it over to Barrington. The Black church is one of the largest landowners in America. We know that the Black church is dying, if I could be completely honest, that people are just not going to church as they used to. So now we have a lot of these churches, and I can speak directly for the Metro Atlanta area, that if they are not being occupied, they have fellowship halls or education wings where it's just not being utilized. That's where our schools need to start going back to. We got Black parents scared and they don't know what to do with their kids, and they're being forced to go back into face-to-face learning with crowded public schools. Listen, we need to find these churches. Any faith leaders that are watching today, pray for my potty mouth, because I know some people have an issue with that, but God still loves me, and the ancestors do too. But let's get these churches involved and build our own schools. It's the same way with the people that we want to put in elected offices. We got to have PACs. We have to invest and support in that work. So Barrington, I don't know if you wanted to speak to that. Go ahead, brother.
So I got to go back. Neo, so you said, yes. So that's the one thing I remember that you said that stuck with me. And I wanted to address that today, because it's been a common misconception that because we live in Atlanta and we have all of these Black leaders here that we're supposed to be able to create the change. And that's not the case at all, because what happens is that a lot of these leaders in these positions of power subjugate their own people. That's just the truth of the matter. Like, for example, and I'm going to just touch on my politics very briefly. My entire platform is called the People's Bailout, and it has a foundation and a lot of things Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke about within his last book, Where Do We Go From Here? Mind you, This book came out in, I want to say, don't quote me, but I want to say 65, but right before his death. I could be wrong, but I'm going to say 65, right? He laid the blueprint of what needed to happen within Black America going forward. This is 65. Why am I'm a first-time politician. I just became the prominence in politics in 2020. Why am I the only Black politician to have brought this to the forefront of the mainstream in Black politics in 2020, when this has been around since 65? Wow. That goes to show where the interests are within a lot of these Black leaders. Like, a lot of times we like to argue that the GOP is the party of voter suppression. Democrats do it to their own people too. So this is why all of these problems continue to persist, because you have these Black people, these Black leaders in positions of power, and they don't do what they're supposed to do. They do things for their white benefactors who funnels them the money. And this is why I always say this, because it's a true ideology. All skin folk and kinfolk. And
Right.
we have to start looking at that. We have to start looking at that. And yes, Jason, everything you said was correct, man. We have to hold our political leaders accountable. And to go back to what Tish said, there needs to be leverage behind that vote. We have to stop giving our vote so willy-nilly just because that's what we have, that the president that's been historically set within our communities. We have people at this juncture. We should literally hold the vote hostage to the point where they have to start giving up stuff if they want to vote from us.
Yeah. I mean, I think that we also, I'm social studies teachers, brothers and sisters, where y'all at? We need y'all doing a podcast every week to help re-educate the people on civics 101. Like, where does the accountability lie? Where does it start? I love Tish's comment too. Specifically to Atlanta, we have some Vernon Jones kind of Democrats on the Atlanta City Council. I wish Vernon Jones would just take that damn money from Trump and shut up. Like, I just wish that he would, because it is absolutely ridiculous. Because if you go into DeKalb County and start to ask residents about the impact that brother has made in their communities, they're not praising him. They ain't putting him up on no pedestal like, oh, he done changed our lives and done so much. So we got to stop playing the radio with these people too. It's about money. That brother is like, let me get this money so this is paid off. We have to stop electing people who are in debt to offices where they can't handle power and access. Because when people get that, it has been proven time after time. Well, I had the good intention to want to be for the people, but then they dangle this in my face, and I know that I need to get this for my mama. And I need to do this, and I need to do that. So, this is what I've heard elected officials say. Well, them boys that y'all advocating for anyway, they ain't in school. They're not going to do nothing. Elected officials, that's what you think? So that's why we wasted the money and send it back, because the boys in the hood, they're not going to do anything anyway. And that's the piss poor ass mentality to have when you have people who believe in you to make change, and you can only see the negative of what our society puts out there about us. And so it is problematic when we have weak leaders that are not strong enough to really make the change that we need. And then we don't vote in the people who we know, grassroots people. We don't vote us in, but then y'all want to work us to death out here. And shout out to all grassroots leaders, Casey, Vining, Mark, Boyd, so many people that I can think of. Dr. Johnson, who was on our town hall last week, Danielle Stewart, my brother Neil, so many who are in our network of activists that are out here. We risking our lives every day to advocate for our children, for our communities. And y'all just be like, oh, that's cute. That's nice. Don't even like our stuff. Don't even read what we're putting out here to help liberate and educate minds. But then someone like Vernon Jones, y'all would say, oh, yeah, this is awesome. God rest Herman Cain's soul. I'm disappointed in his family, because that brother has been passed away. And the family obviously has sold his Twitter to the GOP, because they're tweeting all kind of stuff from this man's account, and he's deceased, and it's things that he doesn't even believe in. I knew Herman Cain, right? Like, he doesn't even believe in these things. Why are y'all doing this? And then people are responding and just attacking his character. And I'm like, who would do this? Why are we doing this to ourselves? So we got to have stronger people in place, guys. I know we're coming down to the end. Neil, I'm gonna pass the mic to you, brother.
We got about 8 minutes left. Hopefully we don't go too far over. But so, like, when Black people are in positions of power, right? Do y'all think that, and I'll give you an example. So in Tulsa, the mayor, our white mayor, who is a moderate Republican, hired a Black police chief, our first Black police chief, right? And so my initial thought was, oh, well, he probably is picking him because he thinks that we're not going to hold him accountable because he's a Black police officer or a Black police chief. So do y'all think that us as African Americans have a more difficult time holding Black elected officials accountable because they are Black?
I think that they give us the runaround. I think that they give us loose rap. I don't want to hear that bullshit. I'm sick of them. Like, to be honest, I really am sick of them. Like, I go with the flow to keep the peace because I am going to keep the peace.
I'm talking about us as a group.
To be honest, I think the people are so discouraged, they don't care. Like there are, it is one more thing that I want to highlight before we end the show, but I think that there are like thousands of us who just simply do not care. I got a good job. My kids are okay. I'm coming out of my rut. I'm coming out my financial debt. I got my peace of mind. I don't give a fuck what the council is doing. They don't want to do this. Fine. My son ain't one of the water boys that's out there selling. So I'm going to just give them $1 and keep on driving. So people are just so frustrated and overwhelmed and overworked and unappreciated and overlooked and downtrodden with the bullshit that's happening in America that they're just like, listen, we elected these people. If they don't want to do their jobs, then, that's what they're going to have to, like they'll say, when they say at the Beverly Hall about the cheating scandal, the blood is on her hands and those who participated in it. So that's how people look at it. But Barrington, what do you think, brother? Because you run for office. What do you think?
Oh man, I wanted to go off on this one because I love that question. First and foremost, Christina, you're absolutely right. People said I was disrespectful for running against the great John Lewis. Not anybody else, but our people said this, and that's the thing. And to go up to Toya's statement, we have to re-educate ourselves. We are the only demographic that does not vote on policy. We vote on moral victories. If somebody looks like us, we automatically accept them no matter what happens. To go to Jason's point as well, when you got to think about it, historically speaking, when Black people have been so subjugated, so traumatized that when we have an ounce of success, we don't care what happens within politics. Just leave us alone. Let me work my nice paying job. Let me take care of my family, and I am good. And that's why I continuously re-emphasize empathy and compassion, because we're in this together. Even if I am successful, I need to do what I can to make sure people that look like me or around me in my community are successful as well. And so again, goes back to Toya's statement. We have to re-educate ourselves. We get so caught up into the moral victories, into the, the happy-go-lucky good feelings of, oh man, we elected an AKA, we elected someone from an HBCU. Oh man, the first Black this, the first Black that we negate the policy that's important, the policy that's not going to be affecting us right now in the present, the policy that's going to be affecting our kids. And what continues to happen is essentially what we do. We have this hive mindset where if somebody even essentially raises the question like, hey guys, I know it's cool and all that they look like us and that, we're going to vote for them, but do they really have our best interests at heart? And then that person gets called a coon. That person gets, automatically ostracized, and that's not fair. But I think if we collectively re-educate ourselves on the issues and re-educate ourselves on the framework of policy that's going to be good for us, then essentially we can start making the moves and move mountains within politics. Because that's what it's about at the end of the day. It's about understanding what you're voting for. Because if you don't know what you're voting for, you're simply voting for people that look like you. As I stated to you earlier, there are this is Atlanta. This is so-called the Black Mecca to a lot of people, where a lot of Black people are in power. But yet and still, why is the wealth gap so big here? Why is it that 30% of the populace of my district that I live in, District 5, the Metro Atlanta area, why is 30% of poverty mostly Black people? And this is the Black Mecca right here. Why is that? Why aren't your leaders telling you that within the next 5 years, that 30% is set to double? They don't talk about none of this stuff, but because they are who they are, and we have a tendency to vote based on superficial things, the cycle of despair continues on and continues on. And at some point in time, we have to stop it before it's too late.
That's good. I know we're coming down to the end, guys, but I know that we I hope we have a couple of minutes to go over, because I do want to address this, building and empowering our community. In the loss of Chadwick Boseman, I know that some of you guys who chimed on after we may have acknowledged him, a lot of our kids are grieving. And the impact that Black Panther, the movie, had on our Black boys and girls was monumental. They see that as a light in the darkness that they're seeing month after month, from Breonna Taylor to Rashad Brooks to, the recent incidents that have just happened over the weekend of Black people getting, shot down and killed and or now paralyzed. And so I find it very ironic, and I know, Barrington, I do want you to touch on this as a Black teacher in the classroom. And kudos to Black educators, because it's really hard. We're fighting against systemic oppression in schools. We're fighting against leaders that really are talking about anti-racist teaching, but don't want to do it.
Come on now.
We're trying to change mindsets within teachers, but we're also trying to change mindsets within parents. I was 38 hot over the weekend with Black parents messaging me about, Black kids need to just get over it. They need to get over the death of Black Panther. Also, Chad Boseman's death, because people are dying every day. But the same parents, if you go to the Atlanta page, I actually posted these pictures on there. Pictures of our youth on Instagram. A parent created an Instagram account of one of her neighbors and her daughter in halter tops and long weave that goes all the way down her backside. Now, these children are in elementary school, nails longer than the mama's nail, makeup on. The young man has on fake tattoos all up and down his arm and his neck and his chest. And they throwing up gang signs and money this and gang this. And I'm sitting up here like, wait a minute. So I posted about it in several Facebook groups to say, listen, we've got to reach out to parents, because I'm telling you, I've seen SROs. Shout out to those Gwinnett educators and parents that are listening right now that are like, we don't need SROs in our schools, because when they see our Black kids and they fit that stereotype, they go after them. Now, these Black parents are celebrating this and sharing these pictures and liking this, and are actually like cussing you out about even questioning their children
They will
looking like this. And in my mind, I because a part of me just wants to break down and cry and be like, Lord, like, well, God, what are we doing as Black teachers if we're trying to show them a different way? We trying to teach them about Nina Simone and elevate their minds and show them that, listen, if you want to be a mechanic, I need you to be the best mechanic that also can be an engineer, and they can also do this, and that. And we have parents that want to celebrate the opposite of that. It goes back to the stereotypes that America has created for us, and we buy into that. So, brothers, being educators, having been in the classroom, we know too often, and if I can be real about this, a lot of these Black Lives Matters cases are from people that live in the hood, that live in lower income communities. Could be it may that someone that I graduated from that went to a HBCU that has a family and they get shot down, I could tell you that everybody I know, we finna be in the street, we finna be holding the city council accountable. It's not gonna die down until change happens. And so there's a certain population of the Black community that is also being targeted. And unfortunately, a lot of the things that are coming up are these stereotypes that Black parents are perpetuating around drugs, around gangs, around the girls being too grown before a certain age, and we're upholding that in a sense. I know that was a lot, but I want us to just touch on that briefly before we end. How can we help our communities to heal, and how can we help to show people there's a better way? We are more as a culture than just these piss poor ass stereotypes.
Oh man, that's crazy. You asked me this because this is something my father and I always discuss, because he always poses the question to me because he knows how passionate I am about everything that I do, especially within the community. But he always asks me this question, and I want to ask, and I want you guys to and everyone else watching to sit on this for a while. How do you change the mindset of a community that has been within a cycle in which most of the things that they receive on a mental, spiritual, and emotional basis does nothing but promote self-destructive behaviors within them? A lot of people I used to come under fire because I used to state that the culture that most people identify as Black culture is not Black culture. And the reason I say this is because a lot of the music we listen to, a lot of the pop culture references that we have, that we take from within our music, within the movies, within all of that, all those things have been attached to us. And instead of making the decision to do away with it, what we did was we just accepted it and went on with it. So when you have parents automatically steering their children towards self-destructive behaviors, more so caring about dressing well, caring about these superficial things that do not matter, how can you put a hold on that? And that's something I deal with on a day-to-day basis as a teacher, because I have students, or I used to have students, that more so cared about the J's that they get more so than knowing their multiplication tables.
Mm.
And it's things like that that we have to put a hold on at a young age, because if we don't, what's going to happen is they're going to have kids and they're going to inflict that same behavior on their kids. Why? Because their parents did it to them. Their grandparents did it to their parents.
That's true.
You get what I'm
That is
saying?
true.
So,
No,
so
you're
at
real.
some point in time, what we have to do is we have to start steering our culture towards something positive, and not just that, just holding the people in entertainment accountable for the things that they put out, but more so, we have to hold ourselves accountable for the things that we ingest.
That's good, brother.
Don't get me wrong, like like I said, I'm from the west side of Atlanta, moved to the east side. I love trap music. I love trap music. However, I was raised in a household where I knew the reality between fact and fiction. A lot of our people don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
We,
No,
we,
that's good.
we glamorize a lot of these superficial things. I hate to say it, but it's the truth, and it needs to be spoken about. We glorify a lot of these superficial things, and then when something negative occurs, we don't know how to take accountability for it, when essentially this is the things that we put in our system, that we know how to decipher between fact and fiction. And so I think moving forward, what we have to do is really be accountable on the things that we allow inside the Black community. Because at the end of the day, a lot of these things are part of self-destructive behaviors, or there's going to continue this cycle of despair that we are currently in.
That's good. I think too that I mentioned anti-racist teaching at the beginning of this last conversation, and it's important. I'm gonna continue to advocate for more teachers of color to remain in the classroom. Guys, we need y'all. Our kids
Yes.
need you, because we can't just do anti-racist teaching. We also have to be able to teach our kids code switching. And I have kids that grew up in the hood that are successful now. I got a student right now that has just graduated FAMU, and I know that his mama was struggling. But that brother made it. He graduated from FAMU. He's in Austin, Texas right now. I have students that grew up in the west side of Atlanta that are now teachers messaging me saying, Mr. Allen, listen, you know that lesson on Malcolm X? And it's so funny because I'm still teaching that same lesson on Malcolm X because it never gets old. And it obviously is powerful because my former students from middle school are now teachers and they're doing the same lessons with their kids. So we have to keep pushing past all of the barriers, y'all, that we are facing. I just want to shout out parents. I know that it's a lot, but parents, teachers are on your side. So please don't fight us about the things that we're trying to present to expand and open your child's mind, because the reality is we don't belong in generational poverty. That's not what was meant for us. If we want to be biblical and spiritual and talk about, our ladder shall be greater. We should have more than abundant, right? We have to believe those things and we have to support those people that are helping us to get there. And then I'll end with this, that education is key. So Neo and Barrington, as we wrap up, because I know we're a little bit over, but let's go ahead and give our final thoughts so we can come on and bring it in for the day, guys.
Right. So I'll end with this. One of the things that I took from this conversation that Barrington said is that, we have to lead through love. And that is the ultimate, way to be a leader is to lead through love. Every time I stepped into a classroom, I stepped into the classroom because I loved the hell out of those kids. Like, they could be my own babies, and I see the nation that, that comes from them. I talk with so much passion because I love, those who are going to come after me. And at some point, I love myself so much. I want to make sure that those kids are, smart enough to take care of me when I get older. And so, or the elders, right? And so that is the message that I took from this conversation. Barrington, it was so nice to have you.
Oh no, it was so nice for you guys to have me on. Again, I'm totally appreciative that you guys brought me on, man, because I love conversations like this. I love connecting, and I think that as Black men, we need to build together more like this in the first place. The thing that I just want to leave everyone with is love, empathy, and compassion. I think those three things that are going to deliver us from the situation or the current state of our community that we in. Have the love, empathy, and compassion for yourself. Give yourself grace. Forgive yourself. Understand that in order for you to be who you need to be in your community, for everyone else around you, you have to possess these three things, because we are imperfect people. At the
Right.
end of the day, we try the best that we can in doing the things that we need to do for ourselves and our family. We want the same things, whether we know it or not. But in order for us to be successful as a community, we have to possess as well as give love, empathy, and compassion to one another. And that's what I have to give.
That's awesome, brothers. I'll just end with saying all lives matter, all Black lives matter. We can all do our part to make Wakanda a reality for our kids, because that's what they want. They're tired of what we're doing right now. They're tired of seeing the same old. They're tired of us talking about our ancestors and seeing the hurt and pain in our eyes of going through the very same things that my great grandfather, when I read his journal this morning, the same things that they were going through in the early 1900s. Y'all, we've got to make this change. We've got to make this change for our youth and our future, because I'll be damned if I have any kids and they live in what we're going through right now. Because I don't want my nieces, I don't want my own kids, I don't want your kids, I don't want our futures to have to go through what we're living through right now. So stay motivated, stay empowered. Remember that you have a role that you're playing in this world, and we need everybody to carry out their mission, live in purpose, peace, and Wakanda forever, y'all. Thank y'all for today.